Welcome to Envision More. Here, we dig deep into the insights of first-generation wealth builders, unearthing stories of passion, resilience, and relentless vision. Your host is Wayne Wagner Jr., founder of Visionary Wealth Management. So sit back and dig in. It's time to envision more.
Hey, it's Wayne Wagner again with another episode of the Envision More podcast. I am president of Visionary Wealth Management. Today, I am joined by the illustrious, world famous Jamie Finn. And I know I say world famous a bit tongue in cheek, but Jamie has a nationwide following in the U.S. On the topic of foster care. She is the executive, well, she's no longer the executive director. She's
That's
the
right.
founder of Foster the Family, and a kind of a ministry partner of ours at Visionary Wealth Management. We're big fans of the work that Foster the Family is doing and has done, continues to do. And we're big fans of Jamie Finn and her family. So some of you will remember an episode with Justice Voles that we recorded, and Justice happens to be Jamie's brother.
Baby
So
brother.
yeah, baby brother. That's right. So. And he'll claim that now because now you're the old sister. So,
Yeah, that's right.
but thank you for joining us, Jamie. Thanks so much for being here. And we're looking forward to this conversation just about kind of the evolution of Foster the Family. But that really started for you and Alan with just having one child in your home. So, like, where'd that come from?
Yeah, I'm so grateful just for the time to talk. I know we talk all the time about this kind of stuff, but to get to do it and hopefully it benefits someone. So, yeah, we are foster parents. We've been foster parents for over 10 years now. And when we became foster parents, it was really with let's go save the world. We have no idea what we're getting into, but we know that there's this need. And so let's jump in. And I have kind of always been bent that way. I've always been bent towards mission. I mean, you talked about justice. We were raised in a family that really was mission minded. And so that was a part of our DNA as a family. Like, how are we going to give to these people? What are we going to do? Very involved in serving our local community. So that was a part of who I was, even as a young person. But then, sort of married life, one boy, one girl, living happy American dream, and just had this moment of, whoa, this is the life that I have been planning on living. We're in the middle of it, and here we are. And what are we doing? How are we spending it up for others, for God? And really started to wrestle with that question. And it led us to the need that I always thought was going to be over there, the overseas, the sending money, the going, and then becoming aware of the real need in our community, on our street, that this was not just a them thing. This was an us. This is our community, our town. And so I just felt this compelled force of we have to do something. And Alan didn't feel it quite the same way, but really felt compelled by, we should be doing something. And so, okay, I'm going to follow you into this, and we'll take this step together. So that was 10 years ago at this point.
Okay. So 10 years ago, you guys just go out and reach out to your local. I imagine there's a government agency that oversees foster kids in an area.
Yep.
And you just reached out to them and say, hey, how can we help?
Yeah. So in New Jersey, it's DCF, the Division of Children and Families. It's kind of called something somewhere different everywhere because it is all governed by the state. So it's always different in each state. We reached out and, okay, we want to do this. We want to get a license. Our deal was one kid, one time. And the reason that was the deal is because Alan was certain that it wouldn't go well and I wouldn't want to keep doing it. And he would just be able to sort of like wash his hands of it. Like, okay, we tried. And that was 30 kids ago. So
30 kids ago. So you go and you get, and I imagine there's some process that's probably a little bit different for each state to get approved. And I mean, my understanding, limited though it is that basically there's been something has occurred in a home that has made that home um, either unsafe or unsupportable for that child at this point in time, to such a degree that the state has decided the child or children must be removed from the home for at least a period of time here.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great simplistic sort of explanation of it. We are always looking to first support families. So that is what the state is primarily doing. Even when you meet a caseworker, a foster care caseworker, three-quarters of their caseload is going to be children within their biological home,
Mhm.
supporting the family, bringing resources, trying to help that family become stronger and healthy. And then removal is what happens when it's just clear that that can't happen.
Right.
And so kids in foster care are hopefully removed for a short period of time. The
Mhm.
average is about 6 months. It can go up to many years.
Right.
And so we've had kids in our home for 2 days, and we've
Mm.
had kids in our home for 2.5 years
Wow.
and forever.
Uh, Yeah, we'll talk about the forever, I'm sure, today. But that was one of the. My own, again, limited backdrop here is, when I was 6 or 7 years old, my parents had a foster child.
Mhm.
My parents were broke, but they financially, but they opened their home, and part of it was there was a check that came with that kid that
Mm,
actually helped support our family for a
mm.
period of time there. And so, and I remember that guy's name, and I didn't. He was, a decade older than I was, and so he was at a completely different stage of life, and so it was kind of a difficult situation, and some memories for me. But I remember my mom and dad caring enough to open our home, when it
Yeah.
was just me, and of course we went on and I guess we would have had my brother Nate, and then in quick succession we had my sister and my other brother. But so that was my earliest and really only exposure for decades, until I meet, some of the folks, you and some of the folks from Foster the
Yeah,
Family,
sure.
and where you all are like making a cottage industry out of this. And but at its root, so the government makes a decision. There's got to be some separation, at least for a period of time here. And then, but this is a living, breathing human being. This isn't like the government saying, "Hey, we're going to tow your car." We're going to take a child, and then there's a need on the government is basically trying to find a caring home
Mhm.
in the form of a parent or foster family, um, to accept this child for an indeterminate period of time.
Yeah.
And this kid does not show up with, 3 suitcases worth of luggage, and and cleanly bathed sometimes, and this kid shows up in whatever he or she was wearing when separation occurred. Frequently, I would guess, the worst day of that child's life.
That's right. Yeah, and that is actually a really, well-educated understanding of it, because I think a lot of people see the the removal of a child as, "Oh, we just rescued this kid. We saved them from what they were experiencing," and while that's true, and while it's a part of why I'm a foster parent, because I'm passionate about kids being safe and being nurtured, we also have to recognize that kids are being removed from families that they love, that they are most likely experiencing love from. And I think I had a naive and even sort of self-righteous perspective of families that they do not love their kids, and they're gonna
Mhm.
come into my home and finally experience love,
Right,
where
right.
it's so much more complicated. It's families who love their kids and also experienced trauma in their childhood, which
Yeah,
shaped
yeah,
the way that they see the world and shaped the way that they parent their kids, and experience addiction in their lives, and now that's at play for them. There are so many factors that are less black and white than you're a good or bad parent, you love or you don't love.
Yeah.
There are parents who love their kids and need help. So yeah, these kids, they come to us. We are hopefully prepared to play a part in their healing and welcome them with open arms, but we are never prepared for exactly what the story is going to be, how it's going to
Mhm.
play out,
Right.
what the child's needs are, what the child's even true history and story is.
Right.
And that's a part of the journey. Is we're along for the ride of discovering the past and the future while
Yeah.
living in the present with this kiddo.
Yeah, because and ultimately, what's led to this separation is some kind of trauma,
That's right.
some kind, some, and it may be systemic, it may be an
Right.
individual event, but it's unlikely it's an individual event. But there's probably been a pattern of behavior of whatever's led to the separation at this time, and you point out, that that mom and dad are dealing with their own stuff. Mom and
That's
dad
right.
are dealing with potentially multiple generations of trauma,
Mm.
but the child also has their own adaptation and own coping mechanisms that have built up to this point in their life, right? And then they're suddenly removed from that environment and brought into Jamie and Alan's home.
Mhm.
And Jamie and Alan, want to give and offer support and love and care, but we have no idea how that child is going to respond. I mean, if you drop me in the middle of a foreign country
Yeah.
where I didn't know the language and I didn't know the people and I don't know the customs and I don't know, I raise my hand like this and suddenly that's a threat instead of a
Sure.
wave hello, and all of that stuff is now suddenly in your home. Um,
Yeah,
and you guys have your own kids, so this wasn't like you were bringing in a child to just you and Alan. This was bringing a foster child into, like, to teach your own kids
yeah.
how to work here. So
Yeah, and everything you're saying is so true. We have a family culture. We have the way that we do things and our the meals that we eat and the standards that we have, bedtime and routines, and it is traumatic. Even though we're seeking to protect kids from further trauma, it is traumatic to be placed in foster care. It is
mhm,
traumatic to be taken from the home and family and brought to a stranger and saying, "Oh, don't worry, you're safe here. They're
yeah,
going to take care of you." I mean, we say kids are resilient. Wow, that is not a helpful thing that we have come to sort of believe,
mm,
because kids can be um, compliant. They can learn to operate in systems, but their brains and bodies are not resilient in the way we mean that.
yeah,
Their brains and bodies, the body keeps the score of these experiences. And so we are seeking to make them healing times for our kids. We know that our kids come to feel love and belonging in our home. But a big part of that is recognizing just the trauma of them being protected. That
mhm,
that in and of itself is a traumatic experience that
right,
is part of the healing process.
yeah. You still are removing me from the only home I've known.
That's
You're
right.
still separating me from the only mom or the only dad, or the only family unit that I've known up to this point in my life, and you put me in a foreign place with
Mhm.
foreign people, with foreign habits and foreign
Right.
culture, and so there's no way that can't be traumatic
Right.
for a young person. So you and Alan, it's supposed to be one and done,
Yeah, sure.
but it's not.
Yeah.
So let's go. Like, what was the conversation between number one and number two that occurred that made number two a reality?
Yeah, that's the question. It's not how do you get to 30, it's how do you get
Yeah,
to 2?
yeah,
And there is something that happens when you become aware of a need, when your heart is opened to the reality of what surrounds you, and when you start getting those phone calls and the answer is yes or no, where you are making a real, actual decision about a human being, where it
yeah.
is no longer theoretical. Do we want to be foster parents? The question now is, do we want to say yes to a 4-week-old child who's at the police station right now, the day
Mm,
after Christmas? Like,
Right.
that it becomes the issue. And that when it's not about the theory of, 500,000 kids in placement, when it becomes about a person who is down the street with a name and with a story, it
Mhm.
becomes a lot harder to say no to. And so we are never driven by guilt. We're never driven just by the need, because there's always going to be more need than we can fulfill. But once our hearts were open to the need, once we felt compelled to action, it it changed the way we think about our own comfort, our own family structure, and the way that we're going to use our life, our family, and our home.
Mm.
And so it became about saying yes to that one child and the specific need that we received a call for.
Right. That's amazing. So you go to number 2, and then at some point it's number 3 and number 4, but at some point here, I want to go back a second because you just use a number like 500,000 or something. Is that a real number? Is that a nationwide number of kids in foster care system, or what? Do we have any estimates on what that number is?
Yeah, the number is decreasing right now,
Okay.
and so that's good news,
Yeah.
but there are about 150,000 kids who are waiting for adoption. That means
Okay.
they went through the foster care system, their parental rights were terminated, and so
Okay.
they are essentially an orphan at this point,
Okay. Okay.
and so they're waiting for adoption. The number of kids in foster care is around 300,000 nationwide.
Okay. So were those 2 numbers additive then? So is it like 150,000 plus 300,000 is the total number of kids that are kinda either parental rates have been severed, or there's a need for caring for them for some indeterminate period of time?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you the most accurate up-to-date number we have right now is 391,000 kids in foster care.
Wow.
So, obviously, that number fluctuates day to day,
Yeah,
but that
yeah,
is, for 2024, it's 391,000 kids,
right.
in
Incredible,
foster care.
right. And you and I have had some strategic conversations about what happens with some of the changes on abortion laws and things like that, and how that could have the impact over the coming years to actually, as young women don't have access to abortion
Mhm.
procedures, that could actually boost the number of kids that end up trapped in this kind of a system longer term. That's a kind of a part of the strategic rationale for why we at Visionary have come alongside, because we just see that numbers are coming down, but there's a systemic issue that we think is going to hit the foster care system down the road.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's right, and there's an opportunity there before foster care becomes a part of these stories,
yeah,
especially for the local church. So if
yeah,
the local church is doing a great job at supporting women who are expecting children, if
mhm,
the church is doing a great job at supporting, single parent households, that kid down the street who is letting themselves in while mom and dad work a second job, like those are the families that we can become a part of their story before foster
yeah,
care becomes a part of their story.
yeah,
And we want women who are expecting to feel supported in adoption services and all of that. But the
yeah,
reality is that foster care is going to increase as there are children who are born into homes where there's a lack of resources and support that's needed.
yeah, yeah, indeed. So at some point, though, between 2 and 30, you start finding either a need to bring people together, or create community, or find other moms who are, and families that are doing thinking the same way you are, like, and that ultimately became an organization.
Yeah.
Like, can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's one of those the perfect combination of who God made me to be, of luck, if it's a weird way to look at it, but just a perfect storm for this to happen. So I am a writer. I love to write. And so someone at our church came to me and asked me to write about our story. I wrote about it and he said, I think you should put this online. I put it online and within a couple of days, 1 million people had read it. And
Wow.
so I was pretty recent into my foster care journey, not someone who should be lauded as a foster care expert or have any sort of platform, but I had a platform.
Right.
And, in this day and age, when you have a platform, it kind of goes from there. And so I was being invited to other spaces to speak to foster parents and into other established communities to, speak at events and share about foster care. And so I just had this conviction of, oh, I'm flying across the country to talk to people about foster care. And yet I'm not building with anyone in my own community. I'm not
Mm.
serving my own community. I'm not in relationship with other foster parents. And these
And
these people.
Alan is watching all the kids while you're flying across the country.
Well, yeah, and he is the hero of this story for sure. So, it just built this conviction of, "Oh, there are foster parents in my community that need support and encouragement, and I'm kind of just going where I'm invited. Let's create this here." So, Foster the Family began with one support group meeting where I just said, "Hey, we're gonna meet. We're gonna talk about foster care," and 45 women showed up straight off like, "Okay, we
Wow.
need this." And it answered the question of, the "If you build it, will they come?" sort of thing. Like, okay,
Yeah.
this is really a need. And once you start gathering people together in community, you start to know the deeper needs. Okay, what are the pain points for people? Where are people not showing up in their community for them where we can step in? And we've joked about my family. We are entrepreneurial spirits. And for me, that's always gone in this sort of nonprofit realm, but it's the same thing of just loving gathering people around something. I love to organize people in what they're passionate in and sort of equip them to go with it. And so we started to gather volunteers, gather supplies, really more formalize our support groups and begin to serve the people within the group in really practical ways. And Foster the Family was born from that.
Gotcha. Yeah. And Foster the Family is now, how old is Foster the Family at this stage?
We're going on 7 years.
Okay. So you basically were a foster parent for about 3 years
Yeah.
and then started what's becoming a force of nature all on its own. So, and Foster the Family, as I mean, my biggest exposure to it is the field retreat.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about how that. So you go from, because at some point you go from a little group, a little group, 45 people show up the first night. It's a group of parent foster parents
Mhm.
locally, and then something happens where this is becoming either regional or super regional or nationwide. And like I kind of came, May and I kind of came in 2023,
Yeah.
which was, I think, the fourth or fifth year that you guys been doing this field retreat. But
Yeah.
talk to us about kind of that evolution from a, hey, let's do something locally, to let's get a larger group of people together.
Yeah. Well, again, it's partially that I was going to these spaces and getting to experience these beautiful things and also seeing, oh, there's a way that we can improve upon this. And, I love going to gatherings for foster parents where foster parents are being equipped for their foster parenting journey.
Hmm.
What I thought it was lacking was the really foundational gospel truths that I believe are what carry a foster parent through the hardest parts of this,
Hmm.
as well as the really excellently produced and planned and organized, where women who usually spend their lives doing for others all of the time and giving to others can just show up and be blessed and refreshed in really extravagant ways.
Yeah.
So I was being invited to these spaces and going, "Oh, this is a really cool idea to gather people together, and I know my people. I know my family, my creative team, and we could do this, and I think we could do it in a different way that's gonna be even more effective."
Mm.
So the first one was a really small volunteer team, a very small budget, 1 speaker, and 80 women. And it was really sweet. It was really special. We had people who were just, raw with the emotion of it all, and the beauty of being welcomed into a space with 80 other people who lived their experience and feeling seen and known. And so the next year it doubled, then the next year it doubled and doubled.
Mm.
And so this year we're expecting 1,200 women from almost every state and around the world. We have just a really special time, and you're a part of it and you help make it happen.
Yeah.
And I always say about you that you put your money where your mouth is and you put your mouth where your money is. And so you're showing up in all the ways for this community, serving hands-on and otherwise. And it is a really special time where people are just refreshed and blessed.
Yeah. May and I have not been foster parents, and yet to stand in that room. Can I talk about that,
Oh,
when you
yeah.
turn the lights off? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
there's a couple of times during that filled retreat that, because again, you're putting, I mean, this past year you put 1,000 foster parents. I think 99.8% of the people that show up are women.
Yeah.
I think there's more guys on the volunteer team that show up to
That's
attend.
it. Right.
Um, but you turn the lights out, and these are women who are serving kids, meeting them frequently on their worst day,
Mhm.
and then dealing with whatever that story unfolds to be like, working through the trauma that child's been through, and doing that in such a selfless,
Mm.
sacrificial, generous way, because knowing that there is most likely no long-term relationship to be had,
Mm.
where we brought this child in because this child's at an inflection point, but the goal is restoration with the biological
That's
family.
right.
The goal that the state has, the goal that we have as a foster family, is to support that child in reunification in a loving home with their biological family. And so we're literally going to give some indeterminate period of time and some indeterminate piece of our soul to this child.
That's
And then
right.
this child very likely is going to leave. It could be 2 days, could be 3 years. We don't know when, but they're going to take that piece of us with them,
Mhm.
and we will never get it back. And we may never meet that child or see that child again.
Mhm.
And that, I mean, that process, that mental construct and emotional investment is, makes every foster parent in the country like a rock star hero to me, because we live in such a quid pro quo. If I'm doing this
Sure.
for you, what are
That's
you
right.
doing for me? And we want to be the heroes of our own story.
Mm.
And you know how there is no awards given, there's no medals handed out, there's no ceremony with a trophy handed out, and an applause and celebration
Yeah.
for these families that are doing this for 391,000 children
Mhm.
in the system today
Mhm.
nationwide. And yet, in that room at the field retreat, you hand out little candles, and then the lights go down, and you start reading statements that are just heart wrenching.
Mm.
And like you almost can't get through reading them without having flashbacks of your own story,
Mm.
because I imagine you have lived every one of those statements
Right, right.
yourself. And it's I have fostered a child who's come from an addicted family.
Mhm.
I've fostered a child who was born in addiction. I've fostered a child who has done physical harm to a member of my immediate family.
Mhm.
These heartbreaking stories. And yet in that room, as these foster moms who have lived this raise their candle to say, yes, that's me. To your point, this is the first room many of these women have
That's right.
ever been in
Yep.
where they can look and say, oh my God, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one who feels this pain.
Yeah.
And that was, for May and I, that was probably the most sobering,
Mm.
emotional time for us of watching that event go.
Mm.
It was really neat to see. I mean, 3 generations of your family
Mhm.
involved with, your kids starting to get involved, and you and
Mhm.
your brothers involved, and your mom and dad there running around like, chickens with their heads cut off.
Yeah.
And watching your dad, who grew up kind of in the Christian music scene, traveling and putting on stage productions and things like that, kind of standing there with his 40 or 50 years worth of knowledge, kind of guiding how things should go, and being,
Mm.
watching him strap on the headphones and the
Mhm.
microphone to give people directions backstage. And
Mhm.
just like you said, the amazing one of a kind backdrop that you've got behind you
Right.
that
Right.
led to this being able to be a reality. But then for May and I to stand in the back of that room and hear the muffled cries
Mhm.
of women being comforted, being hugged, being cared for, being
Mhm.
seen.
Mhm.
Um, that was just that was mind bending and heart bending for May and I. That's part of what's endeared us to the Foster the Family organization. So this year, I heard that, is the field retreat already maxed out?
So, we have sold out the hotel. We are doing our best to make as much space for as many people as possible to be
Right.
there.
Okay.
And we have limitations because we
Yeah.
want it to continue to be accessible. If
Yeah.
we move to another location and we have to raise the cost by
Yeah.
double, the women who need this time, aren't gonna be able to get it, and if we sell out every year, the women who need this time aren't gonna be able to get it. So we're always balancing that, as well as the fact that there is this strange dynamic of there being over 1,000 people and it being very intimate.
Yeah.
And so we don't wanna lose that either, but
Yeah.
it is special, and you use that word of women feeling seen, and that was the theme of our event 2 years ago, and I
Mhm.
wish it could kind of be the theme every year because it
Right.
is the most crucial piece of what we do, is
Yeah.
just women being in a room with other people where they can say things that others just don't understand, that we can say, "I love my kids more than anything in the world, and sometimes I regret pursuing this as my
Yeah.
life." Those kinds of both and, which actually is the theme of this year,
Mm.
those both things at the same time, is a huge reality of being a foster parent. You you are a part of a child's healing, and their simple existence in your home is in and of itself traumatizing. It's broken
Mhm.
and it's beautiful. There's just so much abundance that brings to your life as a foster parent, and there's so much loss, and it's
Mhm.
really the holding it all at once, the learning to hold it all with grace and with gratitude, as it's in some ways the hardest thing you've ever experienced and could ever imagine, and just the most beautiful, rewarding, meaningful part of our lives. So,
Right. So what I'm hearing you say in between the lines there is that if there's a balancing act between the intimacy and kind of this thing being as big as it could be in
yeah.
terms of specifically of the field retreat. Now there's, other ways to think about it, and we've had some conversations about, East Coast, West Coast, and that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. But the bottom line is, like, when May and I show up to volunteer at this, and our daughter CJ and her fiance Jacob showed up this past
Mhm.
year, seeing my daughter's fiance, big burly Jacob Jardum, standing in a room of women helping run a darts game,
Yeah.
during that, it was a neon cowgirls, or night or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jacob showed up big time. His stock in mom and dad's, to be's
Love it.
eyes, went up a lot that weekend.
Love it.
Um, but to see that, what I'm hearing you say is that there's a balance that's got to go on, because the other part of keeping the costs down and under control is that, like, you show up with like 30 to 40 volunteers
Right.
who run this thing. And and a lot of these are people that you grew up with, and now, two and three generations of your family have just done life with these folks. And so the idea of trying to duplicate that,
Yeah.
or scale that,
Yeah.
it's there's limitations not just on the cost structure of the facility and the venue. There's also limitations on how do you duplicate the volunteer base. um,
Yeah, I am convinced that there is no other event in the world that is as large and well put on as ours that has no paid staff.
yeah.
It's just unheard of. I mean, I have my, executive assistant who is full-time. She is the only member of the foster the family staff that pulls this off. Everyone else is volunteer,
Mm,
and yet it is so well produced, well organized, excellent from beginning to end. For 1,200 women, it could be double that if we could accommodate them.
yeah.
And it is because we have people who are extremely talented and passionate about using their talents to serve others.
Yeah.
So it's not as simple as finding bodies who can direct people. It is
Right.
people who are really talented, who love me. And so that's a part of it, are just, supportive. You've mentioned it. There's something so precious about my baby brothers who are successful, intelligent leaders in every space they're in, taking a backseat to their sister to help her succeed, and
Yeah.
my parents being there in support, and friends and family. I mean, it is always the most humbling few days of my year for me, because I just look around and say, why are these people here? Well, they're here because they love God. They want to spend up their lives for Him. They're here because they believe in the mission. They've seen us welcome kids and know how difficult it is, and they want to support. And then this just humbling piece as a leader to see people who want you to be able to fulfill your calling.
Yeah.
And it's really a beautiful thing for me to be a part of just personally. I just feel always so humbled and grateful. But we have an incredible team that is not easily duplicated without $1 million budget where you're
Right.
paying
Right.
everyone what they deserve, because that is the kind of team we have.
Although I will say, if you're someone out there who has $1 million that you
That's
could
right.
donate, Jamie will not say no, because
That
there's
is
more
right.
on deck, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But so we Foster the Family will not say no to a check, no matter what the size. It
That
will
is
go
right.
to an amazing cause, an amazing
Yeah.
purpose.
Well,
So
yeah, and we've been talking about one small part, and it's because it's something you've played a part in more. But
yeah,
Filled is a weekend of the year, and Foster the Family, we are serving on the ground human people every day, walking
yeah,
with them in their our offices, us in their homes, really in relationship with people all year round.
yeah. Let's get to that, because it's
Yeah.
not just Southern New Jersey anymore. Right. So there's and now you guys have got some different terminology for folks that are kind of exploring and developing
Yep.
resources. And then I think, is it a chapter that once there's some organization and infrastructure put in place? Am I getting my wording right?
So we have branches
Okay.
where we're fully staffed.
Okay.
So we
Okay.
have branches in South Jersey, which is where we launched,
Yeah.
the DC metropolitan area,
Okay.
Baltimore, a region of Florida, and Grand Rapids, Michigan. And
Yeah.
all of those are really expanding. The cities that I listed, we're looking at becoming statewide soon in those regions. So
Yeah.
those are our branches where we're fully staffed, where we're holistically serving families from placement all throughout the time that the child is in the home and beyond.
Okay.
And then we have around 100 support groups around the country where we're gathering people together in community, and sort of the baby steps of beginning to serve people is happening. The baby steps of organizing support around foster parents is beginning to happen, and that's the potential, hopefully, for continued expansion.
Right. And my understanding, again, limited, is that what foster family is doing, maybe through a branch, then is you are recruiting foster parents. So you're making that you're going into different areas within that community and making the pitch, making the, hey, would you be called? Would you be have an interest in giving a piece of your soul to a child who can never say thank you? So
It's a hard sell.
which is a hard sell, which is it's a hard pitch, right? So,
Yeah.
but you're making the pitch. You're then helping those families walk through the process of getting their licensure, getting approved to be a recipient of a foster child, and then you're supporting them through that process from placement and on through the caring for that child, that process. And do I have that right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
We work with recruiting foster families. We definitely work with equipping foster families. So that is the training, our support groups, our network of care. And then we practically serve them. So one of the most challenging parts, and really where foster the family was born, was in my experience of saying yes to kids and my community around me being very supportive, but not knowing how to help us.
Yeah.
And saying yes to a child who is going to show up at dinner, as you said, going to show up with very little, maybe nothing that fits or can be used. And me just wanting to focus on loving this kid and helping them feel comfortable, and having to get everyone in the car and run to Target to get everything we need.
Hmm.
So we are showing up immediately after a child is placed in the home with, hey, we're here for you. Here's everything this kiddo needs. Stay home. Here's dinner. It's homemade dinner. We're bringing it to you. Here's a note card. You can call us with any questions. We're here for you. Show up at support group in a couple of weeks. Bring the kids. There's childcare for them. We want to walk with you. So we show up at the doorstep with supplies as the sort of like, let us get our foot in the door of knowing you as a foster parent and caring for your entire family.
Right. What is the response from, like, you interact with these folks that are running the government agencies? When you explain to them, here's what we want to do for the foster parents in your system, in your community, do, like, what's the response? Because I would imagine the response that you get is just like a jaw on the floor, like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, am I close to on target there?
Yeah, I mean, we are essentially always saying to the workers, like, we know that you're faced with all these needs all the time that you can't meet and that are not a part of your job description. And that's where we want to come in. And so for them to feel like, man, I just picked up this kid and they don't have anything they need, but I'm just dropping them at the foster parent's house. And the
Yeah.
kind of like tension that they can feel as a worker in seeing the needs, or knowing, oh, he has a birthday in a week. And what are we going to do here? Like,
Mm,
we want them to think of us as well. When you see a need in a family, a child, call us, because that is where we believe the community and the church has an opportunity. We talked about my journey in starting Foster the Family. A huge part of it was the hundreds of conversations I've had with people who say, I've always thought about being a foster parent. I wish I could do something, but it's just not the right time for our family.
mhm.
And wanting to be able to mobilize those people and
Right,
sort of be the in between this family that we know has a need,
right,
know needs people to serve them and help them. And then these people are saying, I've always wanted to serve and help, but I don't know how.
right,
And
right.
being that bridge there of the community and the church and the family. So we get to come with our staff, but more than that, we get to come with the community that we represent, to bring to the family, to bring to the workers and say, you're not alone here. We want to show up for you. We're going to
Yeah.
show up practically, and we're going to be here with you throughout this whole placement.
Yeah, and I think that mean, what's flashing in my head is for a couple of years we did what we called blessing bags. We would send out a couple of backpacks filled with stuff
Yep.
to our clients to say, hey, when you see that guy on the side of the street, you see that girl on the side of the street, here's a way to tangibly help them. And we got great feedback. But we actually had a couple of clients call us back to say, hey, this is a great idea, but like I don't travel in environments and to places
Sure.
where there's somebody standing on the side of the street. That's like I don't go down those roads. And so like the bag sat in the back of my car for 6 months until I finally dropped it off at a local shelter. And they
Mm,
were grateful and appreciative for it. But it just like next time I probably don't need to be included in that.
mm.
And I was grateful for the honesty
Sure.
from our clients on that. But I mean that process of being, hey, I would like to help, but I don't know how to. And
Right.
so foster the family, be creating a mechanism to say, well, everything from baking a casserole that we can put in a freezer and have available for when a kid gets placed
Yep.
to buying a couple extra things of formula or something while you're at the store, or Pampers, or some clothing, or gift cards, and giving people tangible ways to help, because people genuinely and generally want to help. But like
That's
you
right.
said, we just like I don't regularly end up in spheres of folks that, like, the guy across the street doesn't have foster kids.
Right. Sure.
The folks on my block don't have foster kids. And so how can I help? And I think, that's what you're saying, is that foster the family is creating a bridge between people in a community who have a heart to help, but maybe don't know how to be the hands and feet to those in need. So
That's right. Yeah, and a really vulnerable population that we have to protect. So that's the other thing. We're not just like, "Hey, come hang out with a kid in foster care." Like
right.
it's there in families. We wanna support those families because
Yeah.
that is where the healing will happen. And so even just making sure that we're doing it in really ethical ways and trauma informed ways, and so we can connect people to needs
Right.
without just saying, "Yeah, you find someone and try to help them." Like we can help in that process of helping.
Right. That's great. So 5 branches, 100 support groups,
Mhm.
one best-selling book under your belt, um, another one due out this fall, this
Yeah, that's
spring,
right,
this fall.
September.
Okay.
Mhm.
So another book. What's the name of the new book?
It's called Filled.
Filled. Okay. And the first book was Foster the Family, right?
That's right. We're going for brand recognition
Okay,
here.
there you go. Good stuff. So Jamie's first book is Foster the Family. Second book is Filled, due out in September this year. Um, and Jamie, like, what's next? Like, you've got a leadership team. You're adding people to your board at this stage that are visionaries. You've got an executive director who's a terrific integrator, and I think that whole visionary integrator conversation is a whole
Yeah.
other episode for us.
Yep, that's
Um,
right.
but in terms of your own evolution as a leader, and
Mhm.
and, and how you've thought about how to help the organization um, continue to grow and expand, but you can't
Mhm.
be the one who's doing every single thing. So I think that's a
Right.
whole other episode.
Yeah, we
um,
could do that
with-
again sometime.
yeah. But what would you see, 1, 3, 5 years down the road strategically? What are you hoping for and planning for and praying for
Yeah.
Foster the Family?
Yeah. So it's, looking far out, looking 5, 10 years, what I hope is that everyone can have access to a foster the family support group. That is a part of what we do that's very scalable. We have created this model that we know works. We can create curriculum and share that with people so that the people who, like me 7 years ago, were like, I want to do something. I want to create community where I am, that we're like giving a in the box. Here is how you start a little foster care ministry right where you are. We are going to give you every step. You do it under the protection of our umbrella. You meet with our staff. We do it in relationship. And here is exactly how you can create this model of a support group. Here's exactly how you can start to get the community involved, how you can recruit volunteers. We can sort of set people on mini missions where they are. That is what I'm most excited about, because part of what you were just hinting at with the elevation and delegation and the how do we continue this work when I'm certainly limited, very limited. And we haven't even talked about the fact that I have 7 kids.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
is another part of
Right.
my
Right.
limitations.
Right.
And a big part of my ministry and mission as a person is, they're getting the most of me and the best of me. And so how does foster the family flourish and my family flourish? Well, it's by empowering many people where they are to start these small, very localized ministries that are meeting the needs of foster parents in their communities. So we just brought someone else on to help manage our foster care support group uh, expansion, and that is where I see us really growing, is just meeting people, all these small ministries right where people are, and empowering them to do the work. I would love for Filled to be 10 times the size it is. I don't know what it's gonna look like to scale Filled, but that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that is a big part of my heart, is how do we bring this to more people? Is it a second location? Is
Right.
it, virtual options? And so all those things are on the table right now.
Yeah.
And then for me personally, my question right now is, what are the things that only I can do? And so I have taken things off my plate that others can do, and probably others can do even better than I can, that are
Mhm.
more within their skill set and gifting, that are leading me to lend my voice to other. Now I'm getting to write for Focus on the Family and Desiring God, and because I'm not writing budgets and
Right.
things like that. And so it allows me to be able to write, to be able to speak, to be able to lead in the spaces where I'm most gifted to do that, because other people are taking things off my plate in the ways that they're gifted to.
And yet you have just articulated one of the earliest lessons that every entrepreneur must learn. And
Yeah.
I am 52 years old and I am still learning this.
Hmm.
It is that someone else can do this better than me,
Yeah.
better than you. And, it was, I mean, by the time I hired my first bookkeeper, I was running a multi-million-dollar business
Right.
with a checkbook in my back pocket.
That's so
And
funny. Yep.
yeah,
Well, and it's funny because at first it felt like pride to say, "Oh, I'm not gonna do these things. I'm only gonna do these important things over here." But it is humility. It is humility to say, "Actually, I'm gonna empower someone to be able to work within their gifting
Mhm.
by handing this off to them and entrusting them so that I can work within my gifting."
Yeah,
So it's been a journey.
yeah. And the scary part's always payroll. So
Yeah. That's right. And that's where we pray for
that's right.
donors and provision and meaningful relationships with people who care about our mission. So,
So we're coming to the end of our time. Before I ask you one final question, um, let me ask you this. So you mentioned you're looking for donors and that kind of stuff. How do people find you? How do people find Jamie Finn and Foster the Family? What are some resources that they can go look you up?
yeah, so you can find the organization and the work we're doing at fosterthefamily.org, or on social media platforms, it's Foster the Family US.
Okay.
And then I share about my life, my family, my perspectives on foster care everywhere online, fosterthefamilyblog.com, and on social medias at Foster the Family Blog.
Okay. Fantastic. So that's a couple of ways. And listen, I'm somebody who am happy to make a connection as well. So
Yeah.
if you're having trouble typing in fosterthefamily.org and you want to just reach out to me and say, hey, how do I meet that foster care woman, Jamie, whatever her name is,
Yeah.
then I'm happy to make that connection and help out, help support. Because I mean, the need is immense.
Mm,
It's a blue ocean opportunity, and
mm,
Foster the Family has got a bigger bucket today than they did 7 years ago.
mm.
But you're still at a bucket. You're still standing by the side of the ocean trying to
That's
empty it
right.
with a bucket. So
That's right.
good. So our final question is always this: It's Jamie. What does the term "envision more" mean to you when we say that?
Mm. I love that. I When I started Foster the Family, I think I felt like I needed a little bit of permission from other people to do work. I needed my 501c3. I needed people to say they believed in me. I felt like I needed permission. And I want to envision people to start doing the work right where they are, no
Mhm.
matter where they are. That, envisioning more means there is need in your community. And I want to envision anyone and everyone to just start meeting needs without an organization, without, official paperwork, or there are people, and that means that we can do the work. And so for me, it's always envisioning people. And we just talked about the model of foster the family is just envisioning people where they are to start meeting needs and caring for people.
That's great. Jamie Finn, founder of Foster the Family, two-time author, soon to be two-time best-selling author, I'm sure. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jamie, on the Envision More podcast.
Thank you, Wayne. I appreciate your time always. I always love our talks. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Envision More podcast with Wayne Wagner Jr. of Visionary Wealth Management. We hope you were encouraged and inspired by the conversation today. If you want to dig deeper into the show notes or Wayne's work at Visionary, you can find us at envisionmore.com. That's Envision with a Z. Advisory services are provided through Wealth Plan Investment Management. Wealth Plan Investment Management and Visionary Wealth Management are separate entities. The content is developed from sources believed to be providing accurate information. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult legal or tax professionals for specific information regarding your individual situation. The opinions and material provided are for general information and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. Thanks for listening.